Hello, happy Monday. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Keyrsten and I'm the holistic nutritionist with Muscles and Mindset. I'm really excited to do this live for Anne and the team at Muscles and Mindset, and we're talking all about protein today. And protein is something that we honestly get asked about all the time. Our clients seem to have so many questions about protein. So we have answered all of our sort of main questions that we get asked about all the time. But if you have questions, make sure to comment here and I'll try to answer any questions that come up as we go along as well. Or if there are things that you can offer to support other people in getting more protein into their diet, what's worked for you, definitely share that as well. I always say we can learn from each other. So quick little overview of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about why protein is so important. So what does it actually do in our body that makes it such an important macronutrient for us to really focus on? We're also going to talk about how much protein you actually need. There's so much conflicting information. So I'm going to share some science-backed numbers about how much protein you should kind of be aiming for. And then we're going to talk about ways to get protein into your diet. That's something that we get asked a lot about. What are our favorite protein sources? Should I have protein at every meal? And kind of all of those things. So we're really going to go through all the details, everything you want to know about protein and probably way more. So proteins, what are they? So proteins are long strands of what are called amino acids. So amino acids are basically the building blocks of protein. They're also the building blocks for muscles in our body, which is part of the reason why protein is so important. And these hormones and muscles in our body are essential for metabolic processes. But protein is really important for overall health. Basically, all of our organs, all of our muscles, all of the tissues in the body, hormones, as I just mentioned, are all made from protein. They're pretty much involved with every single body function. So that's part of the reason, those things are part of the reason why we recommend a higher protein intake. And I have to apologize, you might be able to hear, we have a new little kitten and she's desperately scratching at the door to try and get in here. So I'm just gonna ignore her and hope it's not too distracting for you. So good levels of protein also help us feel satiated, help us feel full for longer, not feeling like we're hungry all the time. And studies show that higher levels of protein in the diet can increase the secretion of certain hormones that help us with feeling satiated. They help us to maintain balanced blood sugar levels, which when out of balance, you might have heard me talk about this a lot, can contribute to cravings, poor decision making when it comes to food and nutrition. I don't know about you, but I'm sure we can all think of a time where we left eating for too long and we have a really hard time making rational decisions around food. That's in part due to those fluctuating blood sugar levels. It's also really important for a healthy immune response, as well as helping us boost lean muscle mass, and developing lean muscle helps with recovery after exercise to help repair damage. So basically, the more lean muscle, when it comes to body composition, the more lean muscle we have, the more metabolically active our body will be. This means it's going to be more efficient with energy. This means we're going to burn more calories at rest. And really, I think that's a goal that a lot of us have. So how much protein do we need? Again, like I mentioned, there really is a lot of conflicting information there. I'm just going to say hi to a couple people. Okay, so how much do we need? So studies show, and there is a bit of sort of like a range with this, studies show that the average person needs between 0.8 and 1.2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. So that works out to approximately, for most people, between 20 to 25% of their diet approximately. Now, this is certainly not an exact science, so you don't have to start logging all of this and be super precise about it. And in fact, that kind of goes against a lot of our values and messaging at Muscles and Mindset. So what I would suggest is trying to focus on just getting a protein at each meal. And that's going to be a really good start in sort of hitting those estimates. What I notice is that when nutrition is an afterthought, when we're not really planning out our meals and snacks at all, when we're relying on more convenience foods, that's when our protein intake can really, really suffer. So, my advice here, I guess, is just to start to be mindful of your protein intake and just make sure you have a really good solid protein source at each of your main meals, and maybe add a snack during the day as well. So main sources of protein. Animal protein are going to give us sort of our biggest bang for our buck protein wise. They include all of the amino acids that we need to require from our diet at once. So our protein building blocks. That being said, of course, you don't need to eat meat to get protein. So animal products, so beef, chicken. And one thing I always tell clients is to purchase the best quality animal proteins that your budget allows. I think that's one thing that that's really important that we invest in if we're able to. Bone broth is another really great source of protein. I often will suggest, if I'm finding clients are coming up a little bit short with protein, to add a serving of bone broth as a snack throughout the day. That's going to give you a lot of extra protein, depending on, the brand or how you make it. That's going to at least give you about, 10 grams extra protein, maybe more in some cases. Eggs is a favorite go-to of mine. Super inexpensive, convenient, high protein food with a complete amino acid profile, so complete protein profile and healthy fats to help keep you satiated. Again, with eggs, like I mentioned with other animal products, try and choose organic or free range if you can. The best quality eggs your budget allows. Fish and seafood. All fish and seafood are great protein sources. Salmon is a personal favorite of mine because it's also high in something called omega-3 fatty acids, which are really helpful in reducing inflammation and recovery post-workout. Greek yogurt. I know Anne mentioned this one as a favorite in her newsletter that she sent out earlier. Decent amount of protein. And what I sometimes will suggest people do is actually add a scoop of collagen or protein powder in for a little bit of extra protein. Yogurt, of course, also contains probiotics, which is great for gut health. And just the one tip I would say with yogurt is when you're buying it, just watch the sugar intake. So a lot of yogurts are flavored and use sugar to sweeten. So I always suggest plain Greek yogurt, and then you can always add fruit or a little bit of honey or stevia, so you can kind of control the amount of sweetness there. Kefir, kind of related to yogurt. This is like a thinner, more drinkable yogurt, great source of protein and even higher in probiotics than regular yogurt. Cheese is also great, especially for people who don't eat meat and who are following more of like a pescatarian or lacto-ovo vegetarian diet, preferably goat cheese, which is much easier to digest. It contains a specific type of protein called A2 casein, which is quite different from the protein found in cow's milk, and it's easier for the body to break down. So easier to get those proteins from. Cottage cheese, 28 grams of protein per 1 cup. So in terms of your dairy products, this is one of the highest sources per serving. This is a really big deal, 28 grams per 1 cup without eating meat, pretty good. High protein, lower calorie, can be used in sweet and savory dishes, so it's pretty versatile. Moving on to a few plant-based options, beans and legumes. In particular, lentils and black beans are on the higher side, 15 to 18 grams of protein per serving. Tofu and tempeh, this is one of my favorite plant-based options because high protein without a lot of carbs, very little fat, so it kind of doesn't throw off your other nutrition. If you think you don't like tofu, try tofu in the air fryer. Just toss it with some oil and spices. It's so delicious. A really great, quick, convenient weeknight kind of option. Nuts are also a good source of protein, a plant-based protein, in particular almonds, which are probably the highest protein containing nuts. Protein powder, I mean, I always like to try and get clients to have as much protein from like whole foods as possible. But if you're really struggling with your protein intake, or if you're plant-based and you're kind of feeling like you're lacking options, it can be a good idea to have a protein powder on hand. And I'll talk about some of my favorite types of protein powder in just a second. And then in the sort of preview to this, one thing I talked about was that I was going to share some sort of little easy, sneaky ways to get added protein. So a lot of the foods I'm going to talk about aren't necessarily amazing sources of protein on their own, but if you add some of these things in, they can really add up to that little extra boost of protein if you're a bit on the low side. So chia seeds is one of my favorites for this. Very high in fiber. Nutritional yeast is another great one. It's not super high in protein, but 2 tablespoons has about 8 grams of protein, and it's really easy to add into a salad dressing, sprinkle over your steamed veggies, stir into rice or pasta, whatever you're having for dinner. Even just choosing sprouted whole grain bread over regular bread is a good option. 2 slices of sprouted grain versus regular bread is going to give you an extra about 8 to 10 grams of protein, depending on the brand, of course. Greens powder, especially spirulina. So you'll see spirulina as an ingredient in lots of these greens powders on the market. And this is actually quite high in protein, up to 39 grams of protein. So a significant amount per serving in a form that the body can really easily digest, which is important. So those are some of my sort of nutritionist approved protein options. It's not a completely exhaustive list by any means, but hopefully that gives you a few extra ideas or reminders or inspiration about different proteins you can include in your routine. So if you're feeling like you're not getting enough protein in, trying to keep some of those foods that we just talked about on hand is a great place to start. Making sure you're incorporating a protein at each meal or snack whenever you can. Another trick is to choose leaner cuts of meat because they're going to contain more protein versus fat per serving, helping you bump up your protein intake at each meal. What is the best protein powder? I did mention protein powders, but one of the things that almost always comes up when I talk about protein powder is what are my favorite options? What should I get? I know it's so overwhelming in the protein powder section of the grocery store or the health food store. There are a million different options out there. And I think the bottom line here is that you don't necessarily need something fancy. Many of the popular expensive protein powders on the market have like 1,000 ingredients. And it's just not necessary for you to have all of those 1,000 ingredients. And in fact, sometimes if you say you add a new protein powder and it doesn't sort of sit well, it bugs your digestion or something, then you don't know which of those 100 ingredients actually doesn't sit well for you. So my biggest tip here would be to look for protein powders that have minimal ingredients that you can actually read, understand, you know what they are. They shouldn't have a ton. They shouldn't have a ton of sugar. They shouldn't have weird ingredients. And someone's mentioning here they taste ugly too. Yes, there are lots of horrible tasting protein powders on the market, absolutely. So look for a plain whey protein powder. So ideally whey protein concentrate, which is sort of the best, least processed version of whey protein. If you're sensitive to like taste and texture with protein powders, I feel like whey protein powder is probably your best option. I feel it blends into whatever you're doing with it the best. You can also just look for, like, if you're completely plant-based, like a hemp protein powder or a pea protein powder. But again, just like minimal ingredients, a few things listed on the label that you kind of know and understand. Another thing you can do for protein powder, particularly if you're not loving the taste or texture, is collagen powder. So collagen is not plant-based, and it's not crazy high in protein, but it's about, between 10 and 12 grams of protein per serving, and it blends completely into what you're putting it in. So you would never know it's in a smoothie. Even if you put it in a glass of water, you really wouldn't know it's there. And this is a trick I often will use. I have collagen powder at home all the time. And for example, today I kind of have been on the go all day long, and I don't do this very often, but I haven't really sat down and eaten proper meals throughout the day today, and I feel like I'm short on my protein. So I literally, before I got on this call, put a scoop of collagen into a big cup of water with a vitamin C tablet, and I'm getting 12 grams of protein just drinking my glass of water. The brand I love for collagen is Organica. It's a local company. It's by far the cheapest option out there, but it's still really decent quality. And if you're a Costco shopper, it is super, super cheap at Costco. So if you're heading to Costco, definitely pick up a collagen powder there. If you're consistently low on protein, don't worry too much. Don't force it. This isn't about all or nothing. I think it's really just about making that consistent effort to do better and to focus on protein more often. JC is asking Organica. Yes, absolutely. That's the brand that I'm talking about. So yeah, if you're feeling like you're short on protein, don't force it. A scoop of collagen, a scoop of protein powder is a really great way to add another serving. And I also will often keep a protein bar on hand so that if I can't get, like a really good meal in, at least I know I'm getting some protein from that. So hopefully that helps you with protein, helps answer some of your questions. Like I said, gives you a few ideas or reminders about how to get more protein into your diet. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to message us and we'll be sure to answer those. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everybody. I'm in Tsawwassen in BC, and we've got some sun poking out. I'm going to get out for a walk later. So yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day and keep us posted about how your protein intake is going. Thanks, everybody.